All right, so you're thinking about where blockchain may be innovating more and more. Today, we're going to dive deep into that very topic. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to TechPath. All right, so the biggest issue here that you see in blockchain is really mostly been around the DeFi space, financial transactions, all those kinds of things. But today's guest is going a different direction, and that is in more of the communications and telecommunications space with a company called World Mobile. And joining me today is Micky Watkins. Thanks for stopping in today.
Really nice, Paul. How are you doing today?
You're coming in from, did I hear Spain? Is that right?
I'm coming in from Spain, Barcelona.
All right. All right. Well, your connection is excellent. So this is great. Maybe you're using some of that great connectivity juice you guys are working up over there at World Mobile.
World Mobile connection, sure.
Tell me a little bit about what World Mobile is doing today, kind of a little bit where your advancement in the project is going.
Okay, so World Mobile, the last 3 years, it's been self-funded between me and my partners. We've been developing proof of concepts, feasibility studies, and really pushed the limits of everything we could without a full-scale commercial rollout. Around 10 months ago, 11 months ago, many of our assumptions were met, and there was nothing left to do except for go for a full commercial rollout. And that's what we're doing in Zanzibar now. Right. In the next 3-4 weeks, we have equipment right now in the air and at the sea. We have our content crew landing on the ground on approximately the middle of July, and a full rollout will commence towards the end of July, and we'll connect 100,000 people super fast to Wi-Fi, creating a mobile network that is much cheaper, much more efficient than it has ever been delivered before in a shorter time than ever before. So we're really going for it. It feels like a proof of concept still, even though it's going to be a commercial rollout. Zanzibar has been really welcoming and accommodating to us. Our local partners out there, RJ, has prepared everything. The Zanzibarian government are really excited for us to come over there and demonstrate this new network and get it rolling out. And from there will be the kickstart to Tanzania mainland. And we're talking about millions of customers in the middle of next year.
Right. So, okay, so for some of our viewers, in understanding the concept of how blockchain kind of works with this, talk to us a little bit about the project itself. So one, a mesh network, I'm assuming, is what you're creating within these, kind of these underdeveloped countries and spaces where this is essentially going to give them internet for maybe the first time ever in many cases, and obviously access to mobile and telecommunications overall, which is going to give them a gateway to the world. So it's a huge initiative. How does the blockchain plug in? What kind of project development are you guys underway currently?
So we're working directly with IOHK to build on Cardano a custom version for World Mobile.
Right.
This is a blockchain that has never been built before. This is a blockchain which takes care of a lot of the laborious, mundane, and unnecessary problems that we have in telecommunications. A lot of fraud mitigation. But this I can discuss with you at a later date, which is very granular detail. In general, the blockchain itself, it's about identity. It's about providing a way for redistributing a $1 trillion economy back through the system without having a central point that's in charge and people getting rewarded accordingly for hosting nodes. So it's a real world use case of blockchain, and I hope to be able to share with you in a couple of months that our launch has been very successful, and we're probably one of the first in the space to be able to connect the unconnected to a useful system where they're actually banking the unbanked as possible.
Right. Yeah, when I heard about the project, I was intrigued just in terms of the technology that was being developed, kind of the process of where this was going. I'm kind of curious, when you look at what Elon is doing with Starlink and the satellite connectivity, is that a potential competition, or do you think that could aid, some technologies like that could aid what you're doing in terms of offering these kinds of services and projects out to these really remote markets?
One of the most common questions is this: when Starlink come out, you guys are not going to be needed, or so. Right. Starlink have done a great job at marketing that they're going to provide for the end user. As you know, now in North America, there's over 1 million people, 500,000 people, on a waiting list. As it stands today, there's not very many people connected to Starlink. Starlink is a great concept, and for sure, in the next 3 to 5 years, it will be They have this constellation up, but there's many questions left to be answered. It's not a solution for connecting the unconnected. It's not a solution for
Right.
Africa. It's massively subsidized in America. It's not ready. However, when they are ready, it will provide an excellent backhaul solution for World Mobile, along with OneWeb and other satellite providers.
Right.
Starlink's the creme de la creme of all the names of the industry, but actually in reality, it's not a platform to connect the unconnected, and I don't think it ever will be.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the mesh network itself. This essentially will give, and I know you guys had a particular project. I want to jump to your website. Can you talk to me a little bit about the case study that you guys did there? Was it Tanzania?
Yeah, in Tanzania.
Yeah. Okay. Talk to me a little bit about how you. Right. So how did you kind of get it going? Walk me through the process, because getting that moving in a country like that had to be a pretty big challenge.
For sure. So regulation is always a challenge, especially in countries that regulation isn't set, and especially when you're coming in with a different concepts. You're not using traditional telephony. You're not using legacy infrastructure.
Right.
So we as with our partners over the last 3 years have done several case studies in Tanzania. One was at a university or across several university campuses. This had a connectivity of around 50,000 people concurrently. And we were able to offer the university and the surrounding areas within 35 kilometers access to connectivity. Of course, none of this was commercial, so we eventually had to shut this operation down, but we will be coming back with our commercial license this year into these universities now that we have them. Secondly, we then went into a remote village, which was around 60 kilometers away from Dar es Salaam. We picked up on some fiber where we could. We plugged in some infrastructure, and we beamed across high-speed internet to this remote village that never had it before. What we did there is we put up an air node. An air node costs around $5,000, $6,000 on mass to produce. It comes with oversized solar panels. It comes on a pole with a street light at the top. Underneath the street light, there's a wireless access point. That wireless access point is off-the-shelf equipment, so it's not made by us. It's made by Cisco, Ubiquiti, Motorola, and Ruckus. We support many of these wireless access points now on the World Mobile chain. And then there is a Raspberry Pi, a transponder, a transcoder, and underneath a Second Life battery. And what we saw from this was the university was really interesting, because we saw students who needed internet actually had meaningful internet for 8 hours a day,
Right.
rather than only being able to afford that for 1 hour a day or 2 hours a day. So we knew that, but we expected that in the cities. We expected to see this. What we saw in Tanzania in the remote villages case study was unbelievable. So we went to launch the network there, non-commercial again, just as a proof of concept. And then coronavirus hit, COVID-19. So all travel restrictions were broken. We couldn't do anything at all. And for 9 months, the village stayed with internet. I think they had internet for around 6 of those 9 months, on and off, and solar power and streetlights. Finally, we got to return. So we sent Marcus, he was his head of photography and video at the time. He jumped over there to make a movie, and he called back and he said, "Look, this is unbelievable. The village is double the size in population. There's 3 pubs instead of 1. The fishermen are now selling their catch for so much more, 10 times more than they are now, and there's exports into China." And we saw this was the point that we said, okay, right, so this didn't really cost us much money at all to get this internet out there. We're delivering it via Wi-Fi, not via the traditional handset GSM, 3G, 4G,
Right.
2G, CDMA, all the things that you use, just simple Wi-Fi, which every phone is backwards compatible to. And that was it. That was the point where we said, right, all hell for leather, let's go. We already had spent a couple of $1 million on these proof of concepts, and we gave the go-ahead to spend more. And here we are today, ready for a full commercial rollout.
So yeah, I think what you mentioned there, one, the technology, I think just the use case applications in terms of where the tech could go. You could scale this pretty quickly from the way you explained it. So with that being the
600 villages a month.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting you. 600 villages a month with our existing team,
Wow.
with the people that we have on the ground right now. So there's not that many villages in Tanzania. You can find the precise number. I think it's around 12,000, 13,000, but please don't quote me. It may have grown since then. So you're talking about mass deployment. And again, I'll bring it back to Starlink. So Starlink has 10,000 customers.
Right.
they are touting as a solution to connect the unconnected. It's no one really knows the bandwidth that they can carry, how many people can sit on the same bands. The satellites need to come down every 5 years. They've already been up for some time. Covering the equator, which is where East Africa is, Tanzania, is really difficult because the Earth is not circled. It has the points of the eclipse, so you've got to put the satellites, and that requires much more. So there's a lot of problems, and people are developing 5G technology, and this is going to do this, and this is going to do that. Yet half the world's unconnected. Like, it's stop. Use existing technology. Go and get the other half of the world unconnected. As a business opportunity, it's massive for World Mobile and the sharing and the World Mobile community and the sharing economy. But as a problem on the planet, it's bigger. The fact that every one in two people cannot use the internet, cannot speak to each other. So useful applications and mass scale rollout is really interesting. And let's talk about blockchain a little bit, if you don't mind. So the blockchain is interesting because mesh networks, the way that we're delivering, has existed for quite some time, right? There's been successful mesh networks rolled out over Africa. There's successful mesh networks being used right now in Mexico City by Carlos Slim. You, me, all have Wi-Fi calling on our telephone. Our network operator chooses preferably to give us a call over Wi-Fi, over GSM, number one, because it costs them less. We pay for the home connection as well. But number two, because the delivery of the call is much better. But we have sustainable incomes. We have banks. We have ways to access finance. We have ways to educate ourselves. In East Africa, it's very difficult without internet. So even if you're given internet, what do you need next to make internet work? You need identity. So there's around 3.5 billion people on the planet without identity. And when you've got identity, unless you've got an identity that's recognized by Western worlds, how do you get a MasterCard? How do you get a Visa? How do you get PayPal? You can't. So by providing digital identity by way of blockchain, which is where we're building on a Prism, we're also providing people with number one, the beginning of everything, which is connectivity. And then number two, actually, how do you make that connectivity meaningful and useful, where people can go beyond just looking at football scores or looking at free courses online, where they can actually interact, get hold of financial services, insurances, courses, and be recognized and identified as a person. And then go one step further by having the blockchain. We're coming into Africa, we're providing the backbone for this network, and we're creating a sharing economy. But what we're not doing is the same as every other mobile network operator in the space. So the way telecoms is tanking. The industry has the revenues have completely fallen. The way that telecom companies make money and big tech companies make money is by data, and unfortunately, we're the subjects of that data.
Right.
So at World Mobile Chain, we recognize that there's a new way to do things. There's a new standard. There's a new telecom platform that can be launched where you don't need to take anybody's data, where actually we recognize that data should be ours, nobody else's. And it's our right to do what we want with our data. I would never personally sell my data because I think it's like selling my physical self. But if people choose to do that, that's their own choice or whatever. But at the moment, we don't have that choice. Telecom operators know where we go, where we sleep, who our friends are, where we bank. They know very uncomfortable things about us, maybe more than we know about ourselves, because they have it stored on computers, and they won't share it with us or anybody else because that's where the value is. Now, by having a blockchain, the immutability, the transparency, you'll be able to see that, and everybody else who's on the World Mobile Network, that we are blind. We cannot see anything. All we want to do is take a transaction fee from everything that happens on the network to give back to the economy, because by incentivizing the people to run the nodes, that's how you're going to spread this internet. Otherwise, It's not going to happen. It's going to happen very slowly, and people only care about the connected world, and they're all competing. There's 1,000 mobile network operators that operate the world that we live in and the world that we pay for connectivity for. There's zero for the unconnected. Zero. Yeah. They're completely stranded. They don't have power.
So this is a huge challenge, and when you look at, and also at the same time, it's a big opportunity outside of Tanzania and just in general countries or continents like Africa, with the number of countries there that have the same kind of scenario. Then you look into South America, maybe even into parts of Asia, where this is a challenge. Why have not the major telecommunication companies, mobile companies really moved in this direction to kind of open these markets up? It seems like it's just a natural slam dunk for the telecom companies to go there. Why do you think you guys are essentially the pioneers in this category?
Okay, you got to separate this into a couple of different sections. So one, telecom companies, telecom operators, mobile network operators, they're not too clever. I know because we are one, and most of our team have operated in senior levels or owned mobile network operators. What we do is we go out to the world and we say, okay, here's $200 million. We want to buy a license and some bandwidth, or we want to share and become an MVNO. We need to buy some licensed software from Samsung or Huawei or whoever it is. We need to buy some hardware. We then go and poach or go to LinkedIn, put in a few adverts for a CXO of this position and a CXO of that position, and billing department this, and boom, you spend $800 million and you've got a telecom company.
Right.
Okay? That's what happens. That's how it works. That's the 1,000 mobile network operators right now. The people providing the software and the hardware for these telecom companies are the ones that have stifled the innovation. It's the Samsungs,
Yeah.
the Huawei's, the rest of these guys. They've bought out the young guys, they've bought out the startups, they've stopped the industry from growing, all in a way to capture the entire market themselves. There's only 4 or 5 major players in the telecom space. So the telecom companies would love to go for this, but they're stuck in a box. They don't know how to get out of this box, right? That's the reality, whatever anybody tells you. Now, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, now these are different. So these are big tech companies. Now, what they've done is they've all had initiatives to connect the unconnected over the last 10 years. I won't say anything bad about Microsoft because I really do believe that Bill Gates is a fantastic person and he's not really after the same things that Facebook and Google are. But Google have made it acceptable for us to sell ourselves out. Google have made it acceptable for us to sell ourselves out for a free search and free internet. And no, it's a wonderful service that we get, but it's not correct. They've gone looking after this new market with the wrong attitude, with the wrong mindset. They've gone looking after it to get a market, but they haven't thought about sustainability. So they had the Google Loon project, and as an example, right? They launched some balloons. They bought some really good IP. They did some incredible things. I was very excited about it as well. And then after spending close to $1 billion in East Africa, they shut down. Why? Because they didn't think. They're thinking like scientists and they're thinking like very clever people, but they're not thinking about what the people need on the ground right now and what makes them sustainable. The same for Facebook. Facebook have put up huge towers, 300 meters in the sky. They've worked with the Chinese to lease and buy parts of the underwater cable, and then they put up the tower and then they offer Facebook services only. So this is like this is brilliant because we've seen how to do it. They've spent the research and the money on how to do it. And what we've come out with is a very minimal solution. People need connectivity now. They don't need connectivity in 3 or 4 years' time. They don't need Facebook. It's not my choice to give them Facebook. I use Facebook. No problems with Facebook. All good. But their approach to connecting unconnected is flawed. And it will continue to be flawed because it's not in their DNA to share and it's not in their DNA to think correctly. Their whole business model is, again, built on the usage of data from us. We are their products. So
yeah, well, and you're going to a closed network for sure, which is walled garden, essentially.
That's not right, and that's not right in this day and age. You talk about a global village, and then half the world isn't connected. Everyone's on different, much like the blockchain space. It's our chain's the best chain. This chain's the no. We need compatibility. We need crossover. We need everything. So, World Mobile. How are we not going to fail where Google have failed, where Facebook are failing, where the other mobile network operators? We take the most viable option. We've taken the best of what Google have done, the best of what the mobile network industry has to offer. We've taken the grandfathers, the forefathers, the policymakers, the regulators who have built these policies and these frameworks, and we're now in a wonderful position where we're probably leading the race to connect the unconnected, and we're going to show that in the next 2 to 3 months. And then over the next 2 to 3 years, many will join. This will become a new standard of mobile network. This will become delivering via Wi-Fi. Makes sense. You're on Wi-Fi now. I'm on Wi-Fi now. It's easy. The challenge is hard if you look at it on a big picture. If you start to share the problem by creating essentially an Uber sharing economy for telecommunications, or creating an Airbnb but for communications, and you bring the price right down and you accept the fact that you're not you can change the way that the relationship between a mobile network operator and their customer exists. Nobody has challenged that yet. So we're here to challenge that as much as anything else, to get back our dignity and our rights.
I think, and of course, this initiative, this could be really huge. Do you see this? Kind of talk to me about where the potential markets could be for this beyond what we see in terms of the unbanked and the unconnected right now. I know that in itself is going to be a massive undertaking. Is that the primary mission for World Mobile, or are you guys looking outside that even? So really just demand driven.
Yeah. So demand driven. this is what World Mobile is built on, where the people need it the most first. So we look at let's look at sub-Saharan Africa, just
Right.
over a billion people now, 800 million without internet, without any connectivity at all. So we start there. We reset the system. And when you say, are you looking at other places? Of course, but you cannot come to compete against the existing oligopoly. They're too strong. You need huge marketing budgets, and you're
Right.
already trying to change a system that works. Forget the connectivity part. The connectivity we've proven we can do. Microsoft, Google, Facebook, they've proven they can do. The real innovation here is self-data governance and economic freedom of choice. And I think you
Right.
want that too, and so do I. And in the Western world, we're using Facebook, we use Meet, we use Hangouts, we use Zoom, and we use WhatsApp and Telegram, and it's all cool because it's an easy way to contact. And we're not ready to give that up because we don't know what it is to give up our privacy yet. Me too, because it's too convenient. But if you can start a system where from scratch, we also own the data that they own, that data becomes less powerful. When we also own the photos of us that they own, which we don't own right now, you
Hmm.
think you own it, but they also co-own it. They have the rights to that, of our children, of our locations, of everything. So I think the movement will begin in East Africa and Asia, and then we'll grow very fast from there. Because once we see that faster internet, much cheaper price, self-data governance, economic freedom of choice, profiling only by the correct people that need to profile us, that's the regulators and the authorities, not the mobile network operators. We'll stand up for our rights too, and we'll say, hey, we want World Mobile or a very similar mobile network to have, to run on. And
Yeah.
this is built for blockchain.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say the comparison here of what you're trying to achieve is a perfect blockchain analysis of what an app and or platform and program like what you guys are building. It's just, yeah, absolutely perfect. Let me ask you though, how 5G plugs into this or potentially becomes kind of a competitive. Is 5G even a scenario, or is that just another layer on top of the current systems that are in play? Huawei, of course, is one of the biggest 5G manufacturers in the world, controlling a lot of Eastern Europe and Western Europe, for that matter, in terms of most of the countries who have selected Huawei as their 5G supplier. How does that play into this? Because this seems like it would be almost a direct competitive to where 5G is going down the road.
The network deployed in Tanzania will be in conjunction with Professor Slim Aluni. He is pioneering the sixth generation of networks. We will be the sixth
Mm-hmm.
generation. That is the inclusion of everybody, mass inclusion. 5G is just a marketing ploy. 5G is a
Yep.
way to sell more equipment and software. 4G is plenty fast enough. 5G is actually has much more limitations. There are use cases, don't get me wrong. All networks should be hybrid. They shouldn't be ever maximalist on one particular type of network. But 5G is just another G. Forget it. It's definitely not going to microwave you, but it's definitely not going to connect the unconnected either. Much like
Yeah.
Starlink, it's very clever marketing.
Yeah, well, I've heard many things on the 5G side. I won't get into those, but both good and bad, not in the sense of what
Sure.
we're actually getting. And you're right, it's just the next, yeah, it's the next layer of how
The-
telecom is going to be able to get
it's
an extra $20 a month from us.
and it's a part. It's listen. It's definitely will have its part to play in the system. It's a natural evolution of speed. Why do we need to market it this way? Much like, again, I say Starlink. I have all the respect for Starlink. It's a fantastic solution. But I have a friend now. He's actually a developer at World Mobile, so he has a Starlink at his house in Canada. So he calls up Starlink, says, "Hey, can I go camping?" And Starlink tell him, "No, you can't. It's stationary."
Yeah, right. Yep, yep.
Right.
I
So
saw.
you
We've
see
seen that.
it. Yeah, and it is revolutionary stuff. It's fantastic to put Leos up in the sky and make it happen. It's just like 5G. It's just a bit part solution to building a mobile network. Now, if we can all collaborate and we could all make a better mobile network to connect everybody, that would make more sense. But this is not, again, it's not in the DNA of big tech companies or Huawei to share.
For sure. Micky, let's go into kind of when you look at DeFi and some of the projects, obviously you guys building on Cardano, and we've seen a lot of layers and projects that have been rolling into some of the space, Solana, Cardano, et cetera, that have had some very good implementation and potential use cases. Obviously yours being with World Mobile being a very interesting use case of this. DeFi and just the layer of where Solidity is being used and some of those aspects. We just covered a token not too long ago that really kind of changed my mind a little bit about maybe how things are going. in terms of development, do you see any advances coming in blockchain, especially around the programming languages that are being utilized to advance some of these projects? Any kind of advancements that you're seeing coming down the pipe?
I think it's incredible the space, what's happened in the last 2 to 3 years. Look, we spent a long time choosing our blockchain partner.
Mm-hmm.
One of the core values of World Mobile is don't reinvent the wheel when we don't need to. So
Right.
we analyzed what was in the market, and who there was, and we got to Cardano, and we saw hands down peer review, academic approach. Yeah, I see things. I see how they've revived Haskell. I see, and I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
Cardano maximalist. I see some beautiful DeFi products and protocols that have been run on Ethereum, and the tokenomics of World Mobile, written by one of the leading DeFi tokenomic writers in the space, who have underwritten many of the DeFi's in the top 20, top 30. So,
Right.
the evolution of technology, of languages, of the space is huge, but you've got to have people to use it with and on. You've got to have mass adoption. So whilst it's there, it's in a very small pond. And although that small pond was set at $2 trillion at one point, $2.5 trillion. Right now, it's just dropped down again by $1 trillion. And the reason for that is
Right.
because DeFi is not sustainable either. It's going from I don't say this in a bad way because there are many meaningful projects out there, but usually what's happening is going from whale is operating, and then it feeds down into some kind of Ponzi where the last person ends up losing, and the people first to the farm, or the people first to aggregate or yield or arbitrage win. And those who know, what we really need is to have those same innovators in the space utilize and have a billion people to work with for real financial inclusion. And that's what we're trying to do right now with IOHK. And I think in 3 or 4 months' time, you'll see the real evolution from DeFi to RealFi in Tanzania and in East Africa.
Yeah.
But the space is incredible, right? The innovators are
Yeah,
unbelievable. What's happening
it's exploding.
is next level.
Yeah, it's exploding. It's kind of like when you look at the early internet and kind of just the protocols that were being built on the early internet. Very similar in terms of the types of projects they're rolling out now on blockchain, and really kind of where the future is. And that's kind of my question is, with the complexity, I won't say that it's super complex, but the uniqueness of blockchain in the sense of so many use cases that are coming to market. I mean, I saw 10,000 different projects now being listed. The amount of projects that are rolling out on a monthly basis, innovation is coming at a very, very quick pace. I'm just curious as to what point where we may see another major breakthrough in blockchain in terms of technology development, the software applications, which is only going to give your product and many others, many projects like yours, even more air in terms of the ability to do other things or become much more efficient in terms of operations. So it's going to be interesting to watch. You were going to say?
I was going to say the existing financial, the oligopolies that control communications and the financial industry and sector, they don't want this to disrupt. Let's talk about Switzerland, the home of banking. Why are there not so many that accept cryptocurrency? Why? Because they don't want to accept that they're cannibalizing their own markets, right? They don't want to accept that they've got to change. So to actually see all of this innovation and to take it to the next level and to have people really work to grow this space, you need to go to the emerging markets where there's not really a standard set yet. And
Right.
that's where people can really benefit and get the head start, and all this innovation can be put to use.
Yeah, and I think, for you, and I think the adoption numbers are just they're going to accelerate like crazy. For once you start to roll these out, you get enough scalability, the ability. Your explanation of what your videographer came back with in terms of just the community growth, that was pretty fascinating to me. That really kind of opens up a whole new layer of consumers into the world. I mean, if you think about the unbanked and the unconnected, the amount of people that are in that market space that are just immediately going to go into the world economy. Do you see that being a huge influx into the world economy, both from a finance side of things? This could also be in the e-commerce side of things, just in goods and services. Where do you see this really impacting? Would we be able to measure this in some of the world economic numbers that would come out?
You've got the hairs on my arm standing up, as you say, because you've
Right.
got average age of Africa is 19.7 years old. So this is a very young young continent, right?
Yeah.
They need the internet right now, and they've been deprived of that. Whenever they do have internet, they're paying disproportionately for it, and the signal is either miles away from where they live, very
Yep.
limited, and the quality in the internet isn't so high. So, if you can provide connectivity, and we can be with other companies that grow this to scale it fast, then the potential is untold. This is unlocking the biggest gig economy in the world right now. This is unlocking some serious entrepreneurs, some people that survive in the hardest and roughest of terrains and conditions, and are still doing
Yep.
pretty well. Now you give them the same access to the same services and tools, but their own freedom, their own privacy as well. I think you're going to see something that we've never seen before. It's so important as a global development to connect the
Yeah.
unconnected and to bank the unbanked.
Yeah, you bring up something there that is very interesting, because I have friends abroad, and we've talked about this very point. If you look at India in general, India is some of the smartest PhDs, engineers, doctors, you name it, all the elements of what India is built on in terms of education, which they've invested in their own economic frontier of around where they want their country to be. And you look at underdeveloped countries like what you see in the continent of Africa and where the opportunities are, because you're right, there's a lot of very innovative entrepreneurs in those markets that just have not had the tools. It's going to be interesting to see, because we may see the world stage shift from China, India, and maybe into some new pockets in places we've never expected, with the advent of basically just good internet and communications coming to them.
That plus digital ID, right? So you said it right. You're
Right.
pre-qualifying people to a marketplace. That's exactly what you're doing. So World Mobile, we
Yep.
don't intend to be the bank. We don't intend to be anything except from the communication provider to onboard
Yep.
people. And in our stack is digital identity, and that's where we go. But once you open and you give people connectivity close to where they live, or inside
Right.
their home, you give them that it's affordable so they can afford to stay on for 3, 4, 5 hours a day, and you give them so that the connectivity is fast and they can use it. Now it's meaningful for them. Then you give them
Right.
digital ID. Then you start to have the marketplaces. So right now in the beta application that's being used by some of the founders and some of the core team over here, we've got a marketplace. And in those marketplaces, you can access Google Play vouchers. You can access all different types of things. Right now, how the system works is that if you want to do anything that's remotely normal to what we see today, to have an iOS app store credit, or you want to have Google Play credit, and you want to jump on and you want to buy a skin for a game, or you want to buy an outfit for PUBG, because believe it or not, just because Africans don't have connectivity, of course they have mobile phones, because a mobile phone is the number one choice of entertainment. It's the number one utility. They charge it at work. They come back to from work. They have a light on the phone. They use the phone until it's out. Some are lucky enough to have a home solar system, which may charge half the way on the way to work. And this is the
Right.
one single device that they care and look after. And they play PUBG, and they play games, and they have Spotify, and they want VPNs, and they want to watch the football, and they want to do exactly the same things as we do, and they make every effort to do so. So without a MasterCard, a Visa card, identity, without PayPal, without all these things, how hard is it? You try. You
Yeah.
try. You're going to have to go to someone and
It's
ask them.
impossible. Yeah, you're exactly
So,
right. Yeah.
so what happens is the demand in the country is known. So each of the local shops, they'll stock a Google Play voucher. But because the person who's bringing in the Google Play voucher has to smuggle it in, or has to bring it in a way that's not formal, because Google don't offer in the countries, as an example, there's a premium. So the smuggler puts 10% on or 15% on. Then the person who then brings it into the country to the shops will then put another 10% on, and the shop wants to make some money, so they put another 5 or 10% on. And by the end, a $5 voucher is costing you $7.50 or $8, right? And you've still got to pay for a VPN to access it. So we believe that by bringing connectivity, by bringing identity, you are pre-qualifying people to a better world, a brand new world, but a world where they have access to the same set of tools and services as us.
Right. Micky, I want to talk about blockchain adoption. And first of all, this is a project I'm completely blown away with. I'm very interested to see how this comes out. But blockchain adoption is going to be important for countries. And if you look at something like China, what is happening over there, which I still think is a bit of a head fake going on, where they've cut down, the mining scenarios, they've went in and put a control on cryptocurrencies being used, all that. But at the same time, underneath that occurrence, they've also sanctioned several companies to essentially approve blockchain usage. So they've approved 24 different blockchains for China, and this is basically going to run their industrial, medical, you name it, transportation. They're layering in blockchain into their society very quickly, maybe faster than any country out there, China. Do you see countries behind the game right now, and do you see the opportunity for these developing countries to maybe really draw themselves up quickly with the maybe with the adoption of blockchain technology across all of their society? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you look at China; it's been a pioneer for many years. If China hadn't have done what they've done in Africa in terms of laying down cable and fiber, World Mobile wouldn't be
Right.
able to exist today. We're
Yeah.
using the backbone that's been laid down by China. China's always been, it gets painted a bad picture, and sure, there's human rights issues, massive ones, and I don't stand up for
Hmm.
any of those. It's completely wrong. But in terms of innovation, Chinese have been incredible over the last 20 years, and
Right.
it's no different now. And Tanzania, I don't know if you saw recently, they announced that there was the central bank should look at blockchain very seriously. We've been
Hmm.
working in Tanzania for the last 3 years with cryptocurrencies, and to see this happening, to see these moves going, I think we are going to see mass adoption. What we're not going to see is countries or states allowing unregulated ways to avoid tax and ways for people to communicate without any consequence for terrorism and tax dodgers. But yeah,
Right.
you're going to need to come in a regulated way, like we're coming in. But sure, I think China is leading the race, and I also think that some of the African continents and Central Americas are leading the race too. And maybe it's the Western worlds that are falling slightly behind. Maybe it's the North America
Yeah.
and Europe.
No, you're exactly right. When you look at some of the projects, unless they're doing something in the back of in these back rooms of engineering pods that I don't know about, which I'm sure they are, but to the sense that you would think that that would be a little bit more on the forefront, at least in the news and applications like that. Last question for you is: obviously your system and others will eventually have to operate on a global digital currency, and the likelihood you've got digital yuan coming out, and they're really at a breakneck speed right now with China. The U.S. talking about a USDC, a digital currency for the potential. Then you have central banks that are talking about digital currencies. Do you feel like we're going to end up with a handful of major digital currencies that then the crypto markets are going to underlie, that can kind of plug into all these projects like yours and many others in the future? What are your thoughts on that?
Sure, 100%. I have no
How
doubt.
long
I
do you
have no
think? How
doubt.
long do you think?
Okay, so we're pushing it with IOHK right now into several different countries, working directly with John O'Connor to make this happen. I think we're going to see, Zimbabwe, a few other countries adopting these in the next 2 to 3 years, and then it will just be like a cascade waterfall. It will just be continuous.
Right,
It makes
right.
so much more sense. It makes sense for governments to have this in place for accountability for future governments when they take over, to make sure that corruption is kept to a minimum. Philosophically speaking, it changes everything to have the people have transparency on what governments are doing, to have the governments to have transparency on what the people are doing, and then to cut out all the middlemen from. It
Right.
makes total sense. Right
Yeah.
now, it's uncontrollable, the world economy. This way, it can be much better.
Well, it's uncontrolled, and also, unfortunately, it's there's a lot of bad deals happening that are essentially creating that infrastructure, that layer that is, and I think a lot of people are kind of fed up with, in the sense of now they're starting to understand it. Communication, information is fully available, research is there, the amount of information, just like things that we talk about on this show, is getting out to the masses. So people are restructuring their mindset around what transactions are, what digital means to them, and like you're talking about is kind of your own digital data set of what that means for the future of society. So it's going to be interesting, especially in these emerging markets. I think they actually have a leg up because they're starting from
They do.
zero in a place that was 100 laps ahead of where we've been over the past 10 years. So it's going to be very interesting to watch.
I think so too. I think we're at a very special moment where convergence of technology mindset has all changed. The last 20 years of is feel very oppressed as people. I think that we've always been told that we're small guys and the big guy, and it's really hard to achieve, and we can't really make a
Hmm.
difference. We just better go to university and better go to work and better get this 9 till 5. And it's true. You should be principled and you should have routine. it is, but there's elements that we can break out of this. And as much as World Mobile is about connecting the unconnected, it's about giving everyone equal access. So I think
Yeah.
that it's the time where change can really happen, where we can have some accountability from our leaders and from the tech companies that control our data and transparency. And if we can push that forward, then that would be great. And we're trying our hardest to do so. And there's many other companies in the space right now, IOHK, Cardano, as a platform, and others that are also pushing this forwards. And I hope we can all converge and make one alliance and change the world that we live in today for a better place.
Well, you seem like you're on a good project. Micky Watkins, of course, with World Mobile. Thanks so much for stopping in on the show today. We appreciate it.
I really appreciate it. I'd love to come back sometime.
You bet. We're going to have you back for sure.
Thanks.
All right, so you guys are listening in maybe over on the podcast right now. Give us some stars over there. And of course, if you're here on YouTube, make sure and subscribe to the show. Like the video. That's the way the YouTube algorithms work. And of course, thanks to everyone for the subscriptions. You guys have helped this channel pretty much grow at about 1,800%. We've been growing at about 1,800% clip for several months now, all because of you and of course our great guests like Micky and many others that come on the show here on TechPath. So if you have an idea, you want a rock star project in maybe EV, autonomy, AI, robotics, and of course cryptocurrency and also the blockchain, send us a note to producer@revernetworks.com. You can hit me up on Twitter @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.